Good morning. So, I was thinking about doing stalls when horses are in the stalls. And what I've witnessed and how I might connect it to some behavior. So, I was at a barn once and I watched a young girl, teenager. She was probably there, it was a Saturday, so she was probably there, helping maybe pay for her lesson or something like that, doing kind of a working student thing. So she was in the stall with a horse that was in the stall, and I watched her, stop what she was doing, chase the horse into, the back wall, and then once the horse was there, in a state of fear though, she'd go back to doing what she was doing. Now, there's some argument that I'm even willing to make that she was training the horse, that if you don't stay there, I'm going to become very scary, and I'm going to make you go back to where I need you to be, and once you're there, I'm going to leave you alone and go back to what I was doing. There's some definite value to the way she was doing it, in terms of there was a definite difference between undesired position of the horse and her behavior, and then desired position of the horse, and then leaving the horse alone. However, I'm going to argue the other side of that. When doing stalls with horses in the stalls, if you come into their house and scare them in their house or act aggressive towards them in their house, I strongly believe that is what creates either dangerous, fearful behavior in stalls, anxiety in stalls, and aggressive behavior in stalls. I've watched a lot of other people, not just this young lady, but I got to actually watch the whole process with this young lady, but I've watched other stables where, the stable hands would be coming in to do the stalls, and very quickly the horses would, move off much more fearfully than knowledgeably. So there's a difference. I had a horse come stay with me who was dangerous. When I first met him, I actually did his first lesson between two sets of doors. Like a split door, kind of like my barn door here, where it opens in the middle. I actually did that horse's lesson, his first lesson, between those two doors, because, as I explained, if I can't get this horse to back away from me, I'm not safe. So until he can learn that when I do a certain maneuver, he is expected to move backwards away from me. If I can't get this horse to understand that, I'm not getting in his space, because his space is much more valuable to him, and he's going to make sure that I'm in danger in his space if he's an aggressor, and he was. He was a very aggressive horse at that time. And it was because of unfortunate handling as a baby. He was only a baby still. I think he was 2. But anyway, so when he came to me, that horse in particular, the very first time I put hay in his stall, I had the hay net, so you'd come through the stall door into the stall with the horse and my hair. And I had the hay net in the far corner. So I had to go into the stall with the horse, with the hay, or go in and get the hay net and come back out and go in with the hay and the hay net. So he was food aggressive. So the very first time that I put hay in the stall, he went after me, full on tried to attack me. So this is when the horse now had been moved to my place. I had done lessons with him at his place to get him to where I felt comfortable enough in our language that he could be at my place, and we could safely move into the next phase of his training. Just so you know, the horse ended up becoming almost a teddy bear. He became an in-your-pocket, wonderful, wonderful horse. Just he was very misunderstood in his size and his strength of expression. And then that turned into aggression because it was met with aggression. And that's kind of my point, is when you don't understand, I don't know what my point is. So with him, for example, the day he attacked me in the stall, the young lady who was there had her phone in her hand. She said, I was ready to dial 911. I didn't know if we were going to be peeling you off the floor in that stall. Like, he pinned me against every wall, and he did threaten his hind legs once, but for the most part, his attack was forward. His attack was, he pinned me against the wall, raising his head way up and pushing his chest and knee into the wall. Full on, aggressor, full on attack, not fearful. Like, I mean, maybe it was fear based, but he was on the attack. He wasn't in defense. I am going somewhere with this, I swear. I have worked with a lot of horses who have arrived to my barn who have had the stall doer teach horses about staying out of their space while they're doing the stalls. And I think there should be almost a teaching of how to teach the horse that. So what I did with this horse was, for I think a week, I would put a halter on him. This is at feeding time. I would put a halter on him and I would back him into a corner. And then I would teach him to stay in that corner so that I can come in with the food. And if he moved, I would make sure that no matter what I was doing, I dropped the hay right there on the ground. No matter what I was doing, I would stop and fix his position. After about a week, and like I said, no matter what I was doing, so it wasn't like I allowed him to approach me before I fixed it. It wasn't that I, hurried up and got the hay in there before I could fix it. Now, I learned, like I had to do that first day, that they were so afraid of him that they just threw the hay at him. So he learned that if I just attack you, you'll give me the food and I don't have to deal with you. After about a week of making sure that his position was more important than anything, not what I needed to accomplish, not his getting his food, his position was more important than anything. And so what I would do is every time he even moved, so then it got to where I was verbally correcting the thought to move. If I saw a slight lean, if I saw him drop his head a little bit, which was getting him ready to create forward movement, I would verbally say, and then that would, interrupt that thought. After a week, I would come with the hay net, and he would literally put his head down, nose towards the corner that he was supposed to go to, turn around, and back into the corner, basically gluing his tail into the corner. That's what I taught him. Your tail needs to be in this corner. And now that made that a safe thing to do, where I could enter the stall and be safe. But it was an education. I didn't chase him, I didn't scare him, I didn't poke him with a pitchfork, I didn't do anything like that. I had a horse arrive to me from a school, from a university, who was supposed to use this horse as one of their horses in that university, and he was refused as not a match. And then I received him as one of my horses. And when he arrived, first of all, the guy who trailered him over, the shipping company, they said, he was rubbing his tail in transit, but when they went to kind of, they wanted to wrap it, he said that the horse threatened to kick him, so he couldn't wrap him. And at first I thought, yeah, whatever, like I originally did disbelieve the guy even really cared that much to make an effort to do something like that, and that he said the reason he didn't do it was because the horse tried to kick him, so that way when the horse arrived with a rubbed tail, I wouldn't be mad that he didn't try to do something. When he did get here, the horse was unloaded, and the guy said, "Here, let me show you his tail." And he went to go around him, and he eyed him up with his tail, so to speak. He lined him up. And I was like, oh. And he lined him up fairly quickly, like took a step towards him. And I was like, okay, good to know, you know. So obviously confirmed that the guy really did care enough to try. So like that validated them as a good shipping company to me. Not that I doubted it. He wasn't the first horse that was brought to me from this shipper. But anyway, within, you know, seconds of my full examination of the horse and his body condition, etc., he had 3 very, very, very distinctive, not mistaken for anything but a pitchfork marks in his hind end. And they weren't fresh like the shipper did it to him. They were fresh enough, like days ago, where this horse was, without question, stabbed in the butt in 3 very distinctive, different spots, where every tine of that pitchfork was evident. That's not how you teach a horse to be respectful of you when you're in the stall with him. Now when I first got him, you couldn't go in the stall with him. He'd want to attack you, and he was the one that would show you his tail. Like he'd snake his neck, and he'd charge you, he'd stomp and come at you. And that was all 100% fear-based. Not at all that horse anymore, because I took the time to explain to him that this is not necessary anymore. Nobody's going to make your time in your stall scary. I guess where I was even sort of trying to go with that is there are ways to teach a horse that you don't want them in your space while you're working around them in their stalls. There's ways to do it to where the horse understands he has a job of standing in a certain spot that makes it safe for both of you. And it's his job. It's been explained to him. It's his job. There's a difference between a horse that understands their job or a horse that's just afraid of human entry. It's so different. If you could teach a horse, your job is to stand here while I'm working around you in your stall because you're safer there and I'm safer with you there. If you teach them their job, the compliance is without question gold star worthy. But if you scare them, they become defensive, they become aggressive, they have anxiety. Horses should not be afraid to be in their stalls, especially when approached by a human.